For example, for ternary operators, we can actually set up multiple values, not just true and false, but we can also check multiple values, more than 2. So there's actually good documentation down here as well. It actually shows you right here, there's a function and it can return based on the condition. It'll check the value and the condition, and you can see you can add more than 2 or 3 conditions. You can keep going. So what it's saying is, if this condition is true, then do that value. But if it's false, just go on to the next thing and check this condition here. And then now it'll check to see if this is true. And then check if this one is true. If it is true, take that value. If not, then it's going to go on to the last value. The last value is pretty much the default like else. So it's just like how you set up an if and else statement. If this is not true, then it goes on next, else if. If it's not true, go on the next, else if. And then the last one is just else, it takes whatever. That's the same as just denoting whatever value you want at the end. So let's actually do an example on how this will work. And let's set up something like function, example, let's put num. And we can console.log. Let's put example, and we'll pass the value of 1. And let's say right here, if we want to return, but first we want to check here if num is equal to 1. If that is true, then we can say you guessed 1. And let's put a question mark right here. But if this is not true, then what we want to do is we want to check if num is equal to 2. And if that is true, then you can say you guessed 2. But if that is not true, then we can check num is equal to 3. And we can say you guessed 3. And then last thing we can do is if it's none of those, then we just write a message, you did not guess any right numbers. So what it's doing here is just doing pretty much an if statement, check if this is true, if this is true, if this is true. If none of those are true, then just take the last one right here. So if we do console log example 1, so what it'll do, it'll pass the value of 1, and example 1 gets this value 1 here for num. And if num is equal to 1, then it'll return you guessed 1, and then it'll just skip everything else. So this one should just return you guessed 1. So let's just run this right here. And as you can see right here, we got a value, you guessed 1 right here. But let's say we want to, let's just double check all the other values. So let's put 2, 3, 4, something like this. So if we run this right now, you can see the value of 1 says you guessed 1. If we put number 2 right now, for example, then it'll say you guessed 2, which is why we have it here, you guessed 2. And then if we pass over the value of 3, then num is equal to 3, and it'll say you guessed 3. And that's why we get it in the terminal right here, you guessed 3. And then in the console log here, if we actually check for example with the 4 number, then num is equal to 4, and then does num equal 1? No. Does it equal 2? No. Does it equal 3? No. So it takes in this last one, it's like an else statement, and it'll say you did not guess any right numbers. And it's just like what is shown right here in the actual terminal, is it's the last thing that's displayed there. And this is how you do multiple checking for different values when you're using the ternary operator.